The first time Cyrus Bogard rode into Cedar Falls, every door seemed to close before he could reach it. Dust followed him like a shadow as he guided his tired mare down the main street of the small Colorado town. It was the summer of 1887, and the heat pressed down hard on the land. Storefronts looked faded and worn. Men leaned against hitching posts and stopped talking the moment they saw him. They knew who he was. 5 years in Yuma Territorial Prison had carved the softness out of Cyrus. His prison clothes hung loose on his broad frame. A long beard hid the scar that ran along his jaw. His eyes were steady, but tired. He was not looking for trouble. He was looking for work. But Cedar Falls was not looking for him. At Murphy's saloon, the music stopped when he stepped inside. Glasses froze halfway to mouths. The Pete Murphy himself stared at him like a ghost had walked in. "We heard you were getting out," Pete said flatly. "Didn't expect you to come back here." "I'm just looking for honest work," Cyrus answered calmly. A rancher at the corner table laughed. "Honest work? That's rich coming from a killer." The word hung heavy in the room. Cyrus felt every stare, every whisper. He had paid for what happened in Tombstone, 5 long years. But to them, he would always be the man who killed another in a drunken fight. By sunset, he had been turned away from the general store, the telegraph office, and the livery stable. No one wanted a man with blood in his past. Hungry and worn down, he rode toward the edge of town. That was when he saw her. Opaline Turner stood beside a weathered wagon, facing off with Eli Whitmore, the town banker. Even from a distance, Cyrus could see the fire in her posture. She wore a simple calico dress, patched but clean. Her brown hair was pinned beneath a bonnet. A boy about 8 years old stood beside her, clutching a wooden toy horse. "You must understand," Whitmore was saying smoothly. "Your husband's debts did not die with him. The mortgage comes due in 6 months." "I will manage," Opaline replied, her voice firm. Whitmore gave a cold smile. A woman alone on a failing ranch? Winter is not kind to the unprepared. The boy looked up at his mother with worried eyes. She placed a steady hand on his shoulder. When Whitmore finally drove off in his polished carriage, Cyrus found himself stepping forward before he could change his mind. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "Couldn't help but overhear. I'm looking for ranch work." She studied him carefully. Her green eyes moved over his worn clothes, his strong hands, the careful distance he kept. "What kind of work?" "Fences, horses, cattle. I work hard." "You have references?" He hesitated. "I've been away for a while." "What's your name?" "Cyrus Bogard." Recognition struck her face instantly. She pulled her son slightly closer. "You're the man from Tombstone." "Yes, ma'am. I served my time. All of it." Silence stretched between them. The town had shut him out. She had every reason to do the same. But Opaline Turner looked toward Cedar Falls, where she had just been denied help. She looked at her small ranch wagon. She looked at her son. $20 a month, she said finally. "Meals, a bed in the barn. You respect my property and my child." "Yes." "Well, ma'am." And just like that, everything changed. The Turner Ranch sat 15 miles south of town. It had good bones, but years of neglect. The barn roof sagged. The corral leaned crooked. The pasture had been overgrazed. Cyrus saw not ruin, but potential. He rose before dawn each day. He repaired fences, rebuilt the corral, broke 2 wild horses running loose on the property. His muscles ached in a good way, the way they used to when he was young and honest. Work filled his days. Samuel followed him everywhere. "Why do horses sleep standing up?" the boy asked one morning. "So they can run fast if danger comes," Cyrus replied, hammering nails into fresh boards. Samuel watched him closely. "Are you dangerous?" Cyrus paused. "I was once. I made a bad choice. Well, but I don't want to be that man anymore. Mama says everyone deserves a second chance. Your mama is wise." Evenings became quieter, warmer. They would sit on the porch while the sun dropped behind the Colorado hills. Samuel played at their feet. Opaline hummed softly as she sewed. Sometimes their hands brushed when passing coffee. Sometimes their eyes met longer than necessary. Cyrus noticed the way she saved the largest portion of food for him and her son, claiming she was not hungry. He noticed the strength in her shoulders and the loneliness in her silence. One stormy night in late September, rain pounded hard against the barn roof. Samuel had fallen asleep in a pile of hay. Opaline stepped inside with a lantern, her shawl damp, cheeks flushed from the cold. They stood close in the golden light. "Tell me about Tombstone," she asked quietly. He swallowed. "I killed a man," he said. "But it was not murder. We were drunk. Pride got in the way. He fell, hit his head, died days later. You didn't mean to. Doesn't change the grave." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell lavender soap on her skin. "I've watched you with Samuel," she said. "You are not what they say." 5 years of loneliness pressed heavy in his chest. 5 years without warmth, without touch, without belonging. Her hand rested lightly on his arm, and the words came out before he could stop them. "I have not had a woman in 5 years." The confession hung between them, raw, honest, full of need he had buried deep. Her breath caught. Their faces were inches apart. Then Samuel stirred in his sleep. The spell broke. But something had shifted forever between them. The storm outside the barn passed before morning, but the storm inside their hearts did not. After that night, nothing felt the same. Cyrus worked as hard as ever, maybe harder. He rebuilt the north fence line before the first frost. He fixed the barn roof so no snow would leak through come winter. He kept his distance from Opaline during the day, careful, respectful. But every time their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them. Samuel noticed the change before either adult would admit it. "Are you going to marry Mama?" he asked one evening while they stacked firewood. Cyrus nearly dropped the log in his hands. "That's a mighty big question," he said carefully. Samuel shrugged. "You look at her like Papa used to." Cyrus did not answer. He could not. Word in Cedar Falls, but however, was not quiet. By the time Opaline rode into town for supplies, whispers followed her like dust behind a wagon. Women at the general store lowered their voices when she entered. Men tipped their hats stiffly, but their eyes carried judgment. "The Turner woman's taken in a killer," Pearl Sutton said loudly near the flour barrels. "Poor boy," another added, "growing up around that kind of influence." Opaline kept her back straight. She placed her order calmly and paid in exact coins. But when she returned home that evening, Cyrus saw the strain in her shoulders. "Folks talking?" he asked softly while unloading the wagon. "Folks always talk," she replied. "But it gets louder when they smell something they do not understand." The real trouble came a week later. Sheriff Landry rode out to the ranch on a cold October morning. But she was a tall woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes just as sharp. She dismounted slowly, studying Cyrus where he stood near the corral. "Mrs. Turner," she said politely, "we've had complaints." "Complaints about what?" Opaline asked. "About your hired hand." Cyrus stepped forward, hands visible, voice calm. "I've done nothing wrong, Sheriff." Some folks worry about a man with your past living so close to decent families, she replied. Decent families, Opaline said quietly. Are we not one? The sheriff looked between them. Just be careful, she warned. Nervous towns do foolish things. After she left, silence hung heavy over the ranch. That night, Samuel asked the question both adults feared. Are you going to leave, mister? Cyrus? Cyrus looked at the boy's small face and felt something tighten deep in his chest. Do you want me to leave? No, Samuel said instantly. You promised to teach me to rope. Cyrus glanced at Opaline. She held his gaze steadily. Then I guess you're staying, she said. But the town was not finished. 3 days later, Eli Whitmore arrived at the ranch with Thaddeus Clay and 2 other men. They did not come to talk kindly. Cyrus was mending harness in the barn when the carriage rolled up. Samuel ran toward the house without being told. Bogard, Clay called. We need a word. Cyrus stood slowly. You can saddle your horse and ride out today, Clay said. That's what you can do. I have a job here, Cyrus replied evenly. Whitmore smiled coldly. Mrs. Turner is a vulnerable woman, yet you think living under her roof looks proper? I sleep in the barn. Doesn't matter, Clay said. Men like you don't change. Opaline appeared in the doorway, her face set like stone. You gentlemen are trespassing, she said. Clay's hand drifted near his gun. Maybe we should ask the boy what kind of lessons he's learning from a killer. Something snapped inside Cyrus. He stepped forward, fists clenched. Touch that boy, he said low and steady, and you'll regret it. Clay's eyes gleamed. There he is, the real Cyrus Bogard. Opaline's voice cut through the tension. That's enough. Cyrus forced himself to breathe. 5 years in prison had taught him that anger was a trap. They wanted him to explode. They wanted proof he had not changed. Slowly, painfully, he unclenched his fists. Leave, Opaline ordered, while Whitmore leaned out of the carriage before departing. Winter is coming, Mrs. Turner, he said smoothly. Banks do not extend kindness forever. After they were gone, Cyrus sat on a hay bale, head in his hands. I wanted to hit him, he admitted. I wanted it bad. But you didn't, Opaline said softly. That is the difference. Snow came early that year. The ranch grew quiet under a white blanket. Isolation shielded them from town gossip. Nights were warmer inside the small kitchen, lamplight glowing against frost-covered windows. One evening, Samuel fell asleep at the table after supper. Cyrus carried him to bed gently. When he returned, Opaline stood near the stove, hands folded. I cannot pretend anymore, she said quietly. He stepped closer. Neither can I. Their hands found each other naturally. I know what people would say, she whispered. They always say something. Her fingers traced the scar along his jaw. You have brought peace to this house. I never thought I deserved this, he said. Deserve has nothing to do with it. He leaned forward slowly. I want to kiss you. Then do. Their lips met softly at first, then deeper. 5 years of loneliness poured out of him. 2 years of widowhood answered back from her. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. The world outside still judged him. But inside that small ranch house, for the first time in years, Cyrus felt something close to hope. Winter settled hard over Cedar Falls, but the real cold came from town. 2 mornings after the kiss, Sheriff Landry returned. This time, she did not come alone. She carried a folded paper in her hand, and her expression was not friendly. Cyrus Bogard, she said firmly. You're under arrest for making violent threats against Eli Whitmore and Thaddeus Clay. Opaline stepped forward immediately. That's a lie. Maybe, the sheriff replied, but I still have to bring him in. Cyrus looked at Opaline, then at Samuel standing behind her, eyes wide with fear. It's all right, Cyrus said gently. I'll come peacefully. He held out his hands. The shackles closed around his wrists. As they led him away, Samuel broke free and ran forward. You're not bad, the boy shouted. They're lying. Cyrus forced a smile. Be strong, Samuel. The jail in Cedar Falls was small and cold. Cyrus sat on the narrow bunk and stared at the barred window. He had spent 5 years behind iron once before. He knew what injustice felt like. But this time hurt more, because now he had something to lose. That night, Eli Whitmore visited him. The banker pulled up a chair outside the cell, calm and polished as always. You can avoid a trial, Whitmore said smoothly. The jail door may accidentally be left unlocked. You ride out, disappear. Mrs. Turner loses her hired help and comes to her senses. And if I refuse, you stand trial. Given your history, I doubt the jury will be kind. Cyrus stared at him through the bars. You're afraid, he said quietly. Whitmore's smile flickered. You are in no position to threaten anyone. Cyrus leaned back calmly. Prison had taught him patience. I don't need to threaten you, he said. Truth does that well enough. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Opaline was not sitting idle. She had been reading through the legal books Cyrus had gathered during his prison years. Territorial statutes, foreclosure laws, property rights. The more she read, the angrier she became. Whitmore had been targeting widows and elderly landowners for years, forcing illegal foreclosures, buying their land through a false holding company. And there was more. Among Cyrus's old papers, she found a newspaper clipping from Tombstone. Rufus McCord, the man Cyrus had killed in that drunken fight. McCord had worked for Whitmore. He had been part of the same land scheme. Cyrus had not killed an innocent man protecting himself in a bar fight. He had stopped a predator. The next morning, Opaline rode into town with those documents in her saddlebag. She did not ride to the bank. She rode to Sheriff Landry. By sunset, everything changed. Cyrus sat in his cell when Deputy Miller appeared with a ring of keys. You're free, he said quietly. The charges? Dropped. Seems there were irregularities. Outside, Opaline waited with Samuel. Cyrus stepped into the cold air and saw them both. The relief in Samuel's face nearly broke him. What happened? Cyrus asked once they were home. Opaline spread the papers across the kitchen table. She told him everything. Whitmore's fraud, the holding company, McCord's connection. You didn't know, she said gently. You didn't know who he really was. Cyrus closed his eyes. It doesn't change that I lost my temper, he said. But it changes why Whitmore fears me. 3 days later, federal marshals rode into Cedar Falls. The entire town gathered on Main Street. Whitmore stood on the steps of his bank and shouting about lies and conspiracies. But the evidence was clear. Ledgers were produced. False contracts were exposed. And Cyrus stepped forward to speak. He did not shout. He did not rage. He told the truth. I made a mistake 5 years ago, he said steadily. I paid for it. But I will not let another man use fear to steal from innocent people. The crowd listened. For the first time, they saw not a killer, but a man who had changed. When the marshals placed Whitmore in shackles, a hush fell over the street. Samuel tugged Cyrus's coat. Does this mean we keep our ranch? Cyrus knelt down and smiled. Yes, son, we keep it. The word came naturally. Opaline stepped closer. The cold wind lifted her hair slightly. "If you're staying," she said softly, "it won't be as hired help." Cyrus looked into her green eyes. "I don't want to be your ranch hand," he said clearly. "I want to be your husband." The town fell silent. Samuel's mouth dropped open. "You're asking me to marry you?" Opaline asked, her cheeks pink from more than just the cold. "I am. I love you. I love your boy. I love the life we've built. If you'll have me, I will spend the rest of my days proving I'm worthy of it." Samuel whooped before she could answer. "Yes," Opaline whispered. "Yes, Cyrus." She kissed him in the middle of Cedar Falls, with the whole town watching. 6 months later, on a warm June morning, the Turner ranch was filled with laughter. Tables lined the yard. Neighbors brought food. Children ran across the grass. Cyrus stood on the porch in his best suit. Opaline stepped out of the house in a simple white dress, glowing under the wide Colorado sky. Samuel walked proudly beside her with the rings. When they spoke their vows, Cyrus felt something settle inside him. Peace. He had ridden into town with nothing but a past full of regret. Now he stood with a wife, a son, and land to call his own. As the sun set that evening and music drifted across the hills, Cyrus held Opaline close. "Any regrets?" she asked. "Only one," he said. "What's that?" "I wish I had found you sooner." She smiled and leaned into him. "We found each other when we were meant to." Under the Colorado stars, Cyrus Bogard, former convict, rancher, husband, father, finally understood what home felt like.